Good day to you all. I'm Tony Welsh, aka the Body Armour Guy, and I want to speak to you today about the body armour decision making process. According to the UK's Office for National Statistics and a subsequent House of Commons publication in September of last year, it's evident that the number of offences involving a knife or sharp instrument continue to increase year on year. Whilst the figures did decrease in the reporting year 2021, it's widely acknowledged that this is a direct result of the coronavirus pandemic. As such, more and more organisations in the UK are quite rightly turning to the provision of PPE in order to protect their frontline workers. But very few really understand the subject matter sufficiently to make an informed and impartial decision which provides the appropriate levels of protection required by law. So, my aim in this presentation is to give you a little bit more of an understanding of the key considerations when it comes to deciding if body armour is appropriate, and if it is, what to look for in that body armour to ensure that the most suitable piece of PPE is issued. And by appropriate and suitable, I mean that it's the correct protection level relevant to the threat, that it's correctly fitted, that it's comfortable, and that it's certified. Now, I'd love to go really deep into two key subtopics here, namely PPE legislation and risk assessments, but sadly, timing restrictions don't really allow us to cover either in any great depth here today. And I'd also suspect that I might lose the attention of one or two viewers if I did. So I'm going to have to make a couple of assumptions here. Now, I know what to say about assumptions, just bear with me. The first assumption is that as an employer, you're already aware of your legal obligation to provide PPE to your staff where a residual risk has been identified, and that it must be identified as part of a formal risk assessment. The second assumption I'm going to make is in relation to the risk assessments themselves. The assumption being that A, you're all carrying them out correctly by suitably trained and qualified persons. B, that they're continuously reviewed, because as we know, threats are ever changing, especially when carrying out a security function. C, that they are specific, i.e. not generic, without consideration to location, environment and specific function, etc. And D, finally, without bias. And I emphasise that as I'm aware, sadly, of organisations that play down risk to avoid the procurement of such PPE. So, let's say that your risk assessment outcome dictates that PPE, specifically body armour, is required. What now? Well, first thing we need to identify in the decision-making process is the threat. What's the specific threat? Is it firearms, knife attack? What is it? This is of paramount importance to determine the kind of body armour needed, because contrary to popular belief, not all body armour is the same, and indeed far from it. It's what's inside the covers that really matters. Bear in mind, when body armour was first designed in the UK for police officers, it was done to protect the vital organs from knife attack and bullets, i.e. life-threatening injuries. The most common materials, Kevlar and Twaron, are still being used to this day. They're also very good at doing the job of mitigating the risk of harm through to blunt force trauma injuries, the bats, the kicks, the bricks, etc. Do you really need to consider, therefore, rigid armour panels, for example? I would say that unless your organisation is involved in public order situations, cell extractions and repeated high-end control and restraint incidents in the likes of custodial or correction environments, then soft body armour is still the most suitable. But again, only your risk assessment outcome will determine this. As mentioned earlier, be sure not to overprotect unnecessarily. To do so may well increase the weight of the body armour, leading on to other issues because of this. Not to mention the potential for increased cost associated with unnecessary additional protection. Ensuring that the body armour is correctly fitted is a must. Now, I appreciate that we're talking here about the decision-making process as to which armour might be best, but you need to familiarise yourself with any supplier's limitations as part of that process. Because whilst suppliers will provide fitting guides and size charts, this isn't a guarantee that the body armour will be a great fit. To that end, be prepared to ensure that the body armour is tried on by the wearer before any window to return the goods expires. Better still, speak with the various suppliers and insist on trials of their vests. Make sure that the body armour is tried on in normal clothing for both summer and winter uniforms. Body armour should also be sufficiently adjustable to allow for changes in uniform, but also changes in body shape. Now, ill-fitting body armour is a big no-no. If it doesn't fit the majority, then it needs to be reconsidered and an alternative supplier found. Ill-fitting vests also create vulnerable and exposed areas if they're too big or too small, so make sure you get it right. It's also the reason why I would never advise buying pool vests. Whilst the HSE don't forbid the sharing of PPE, I'm not naive to the financial benefits. I personally wouldn't want my staff wearing a piece of PPE that's shared, not knowing the state of it. Has it been looked after? But also from a hygiene point of view. Finally, if it's incorrectly fitted, it may lead to medical issues such as back pain or musculoskeletal injuries. Think about how it's going to be load bearing, how much kit and equipment is going to be carried and where. So moving on to comfort. Now, comfort is not necessarily the same as correctly fitting. My partner, for example, wears my old rugby club hoodie because it's comfortable. She, however, is about 5'3". I'm about 6'4" and verging on 18 stone on any given Sunday. My point being, it doesn't fit her. With body armour, you need to ensure that your staff are going to be comfortable wearing it, especially if they've not worn body armour before. And this can be achieved a number of ways. Firstly, like we've already said, make sure it's the correct size and appropriately fitted. Secondly though, make sure that it's only going to be worn during periods on duty where the risk is present. By that, I mean, do they have to wear it whilst driving, in the office, in the guard hut? If so, why? Don't make the body armour compulsory during times or tasks where it's not appropriate to do so. You'll lose their buy-in and they may well take the decision not to wear it unbeknownst to you. If it's overworn, it'll not be comfortable. So take all of these things into consideration. No body armour is airy or cool. Manufacturers try their best to maximise the airflow, but they still create and raise the body temperature. Be prepared to roll out a maintenance and cleaning schedule and make sure that the body armour is correctly stored. This will help reduce degradation in the armour, which can in turn then cause potential discomfort as it degrades. So look after it. Present a positive open door policy for staff to address the issues relating to body armour that may become uncomfortable due to body shape changes. If it's done in any other way, then the staff may again choose not to wear the body armour if it becomes uncomfortable. On to certification then. Certification is another one of those subtopics that really deserves a session on its own. There's many types of certification, many standards to test to prior to certification and many different certifying bodies. But for the purpose of this presentation, however, I'll try and stick to the basic fundamentals. And again, I'll speak about the UK rules specifically and most common practices. In other words, the things to really look out for. Now, firstly, if you're buying body armour in the UK, which is to be used in the UK, the accepted standard to which to test body armour for stab resistance is currently the Home Office Body Armour Standard 2017. Any protective panels inside your body armour inside the cover should clearly state if it's tested to that standard. Knife resistance is indicated by the letters KR followed by a number. Spike resistance is indicated by an SP followed by a number, and then the same sort of pattern applies for different protection levels, for example ballistics. So look out for these. But just a point to note at this stage, remember what I said earlier about over or unnecessary protection in PPE. Your risk assessment outcome dictates the protection required. Don't go excessive. There are, of course, various international standards for body armour. The American NIJ standard and the German VPAM standards are also common, but be very careful if choosing certified vests in the UK with other international certifications, as the protection levels do differ from those in the UK, and you must gain a thorough understanding first of the protection levels in each publication to ensure that you're getting a level of protection appropriate to the threats identified in your risk assessment. The exception to this, however, is when it comes to ballistic protection, as the American NIJ standards are generally known globally and here in the UK are just as accepted as our own Home Office standards. Okay, so now we need to touch on CE and UKCA certification. Due to the nature of the product, body armour falls into a category that means CA or UKCA certification is mandatory. This certification shows that the manufacturer has checked that these products meet the UK and European safety and health requirements and an indicator of a product's compliance with legislation within the UK or Europe. UKCA for in the UK and CE for within Europe. I'd urge you all to make sure that your body armour you're considering for your employees is indeed UKCA marked. Don't be tempted by cheap armour from faraway lands. These certifications are there for a reason, and I can personally testify here and now that the quality across manufacturers differs greatly. Don't take the gamble. Now, we've just covered the 4 key elements to consider in the body armour decision making process. The protection level, primarily indicated by your risk assessment outcome, ensuring the correct fitting, comfort, and certifying. I just need to add a couple of cautionary points to this before we wrap up. Firstly, please don't get brainwashed by a sales pitch. Companies that sell these products will sometimes create a convincing yet often false narrative which suits their products. Look at your own risk assessment outcomes. Think about the primary reason for your staff needing the body armour and match the threats with the protection level of the armour. Secondly, my good friends in the police services throughout the UK are not the subject matter experts here. The role that our police officers conduct may be drastically different to the role that your employees carry out. Those roles will inevitably provide their own risks and threats. To that end, police body armour is not necessarily suitable for you. Again, follow your own risk assessment outcomes and the other elements that we've covered here today. On a more positive note, body armour industry is an exciting one and loads going on at the moment globally. Here in the UK, there's currently new standards being written, not something to worry about. The implications of and the fallout won't be known or implemented for a good few years yet. But also, new technology on the horizon with smart armour integrations, new materials to try and make, again, the body armour lighter, more comfortable, given the protection levels. Thank you for your time today. I'm Tony Welsh, aka the Body Armour Guy. Stay safe and bye-bye for now.